still because an hour ahead. But I want to say about 11 or 10 this time. I went over to a friend's house who I had also just met off of Tinder. Like answer. Donald Trump makes yet another desperate. This might be a hot take, but can I tell you, lawyers hate gatekeeping. I'm Amelia. I'm an attorney here at Imani Law. But just being in the legal community and having gone to law school, I know tons of lawyers, and I can confidently say we actually hate gatekeeping. We want you guys to have.
All right. Let's see what we got. All right. Mm. 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 Oh, uh-huh. Hmm. Uh,
Oh, hey,
Howdy.
hey, Peter. Yeah, I was just wondering where the Zoom link was, and I just sent you an email. And before my email was even sent, you sent me the Zoom link.
I try to read everybody's minds before
Yeah,
the meeting.
yeah. Well, I was thinking Alice must have sent one, but then I couldn't find anything from Alice, and I couldn't find anything from you, and then poof, it just showed up. So good, worked out.
Probably should have some chatbot automatically send them out right before the meetings, just in case.
Just in case, just as a reminder. Anyway, the bottom line was, I I saw your link just as I was searching around. I was doing a search of all my emails saying it must be here somewhere. Peter wouldn't have scheduled it without scheduling a link. So,
Well, glad you could join me.
and I
Very
got your
happy
document
to.
too. I saw that you sent a shared document.
I did. I went ahead and did what occurred to me, which may or may not be what you guys need, but it kind of kicks off some possibilities and thinking. And just so you know, I'm willing to be on another call with anybody from your company so that we could nail down their point of view. And I noticed that Mo Rubenzahl is on your team page.
Yeah. Mo
So-
helped us with has helped us a lot with our whole marketing, positioning, our message, our branding, stuff like that. So yeah, he's done
Awesome.
a lot.
Well, I was going to joke and say, I don't know what you need me for, but now that
Well,
he's here.
without being rude, I think that you had thought that there were some things that you could offer, and I was open to anything. So, which isn't to say that I'm looking for you to. What I'm saying is, I'm not looking for you to solve a particular problem, but it sounded like you had some thoughts that you wanted to share, and I'm sure open to that. So, because
I do.
I think we had the conversation that says, I hate sales and marketing. And of course, the reason I hate it is I don't understand it. I don't like it. I'm not good at it. I hate doing it. And you were the opposite. You were saying, yeah. And we're now working with a guy in our company. His name is Tim Curley. And like Curly, we need Curly, we need Mo, and we need what's the other Harp, whatever. What are the three stooges? I don't remember.
And Larry.
Larry, Mo, and Curly. Anyway, so but we've got Tim on board, and he likes doing that kind of stuff. So I'm looking to him to help build a go-to-market strategy. How do we build calls to action? How do we build a sales process that brings people to closure? And to be fair,
Yeah.
where we're at in our business. In fact, we had a meeting this morning with one of our main clients who's providing us with a good chunk of revenue, at least for our little company, and continuing to do so. And of course, they want us to succeed. They want us to be a profitable business and expand and so on and so forth. And when I get a chance to talk to customers, that's not a problem. The problem that I have and we have in general is I was joking a few months ago saying we're not like a Honda dealership where people come to us because they want to buy a car, right? Nobody knows who we are. They don't even know they have a problem, or they know they have a problem, but they don't know that there's a solution, and so on and so forth. So how do we get known, right? And how do we get known? And what's our tagline? What's our message? If the old elevator pitch thing, right? You meet someone, you've got 30 seconds. How do you tell them what you do and why you're of value to them? And that's the problem. As engineers, we always tell people what we do. And what Mo says is, shut up. They're not interested in what you do. They're interested in, the why. Why is this important, right? Why is this valuable to me? So you've got to answer the why question, not the what question.
Yes. And that's so hard.
It is
so
hard
when we're on this side of the fence.
Right.
But I forget whether it was Amazon, some company, their only motto is it's about the customer. It's not about us.
Right.
That's just the alpha and the omega. And really what I'm focused on most of the time in my little ways of operating is lining up opportunities to have conversations with people, to build relationships, and to do informational interviews, get information, and get endorsements, whatever recommendations, like you should meet so and so, and people who can buy. So I'm out really building relationships, which is fun. That's totally fun. So that's what I'll bring mostly today. It sounds like most of the other things that you've got are, and I'm going to paste in a URL here so Otter records this call for us. You working on it, Otter? I hope so.
It was. When I came on, it said this is being recorded, but your Otter thing disappeared. It was shown as one of the participants, and it dropped a few minutes ago.
Interesting, because I thought it would be a participant.
It was when I logged on, and it was on for the first few minutes, and then it dropped just 5 minutes ago or so. But although it still says recording in the corner.
Well, that would be the Zoom recording, which is
Right.
I can convert to a transcript later because you said some very specific things about things that would be helpful to you. But I'm going to assume for the moment that your other experts and experienced hands can handle the things like elevator speeches and closing the deal and all of that. It's not that I couldn't research it, but I've already done some research and I'd share it with you and see if anything
Sure.
piques your interest. And in that document I shared with you is pretty much everything I'll share with you on the phone, and you can just highlight or make a note of things that you want to share with people in the company. If none of it's useful, then at least we had a chance to visit, but maybe something.
Maybe something jumps out, right?
Uh-huh. So I'm going to share my screen, and then I'm going to get down in the document here. I'll share this general screen. All right. Let's go to my Google Doc notes here. A lot of this is based on ideas and information that I gather through different chatbots. So if you or anyone else you know has an interest in learning a little bit about how to use chatbots, which I'm getting more speaking invitations for chatbots than anything else, and I'm getting a lot of invitations for other stuff to speak these days. So I did a little session with a professor of psychology from Santa Clara and her husband. And if you click on that link, it'll take you right to that video with
The
Shauna
AI training
Shapiro.
video, is that the one that's the AI training video link?
Yeah. That's it's about 45 minutes, so it's not terribly long, but people are finding it useful.
Go back to that.
Oh, sure. This is the insider view of the video. It's not the
Shauna Shapiro. Okay.
uh-huh.
Interesting.
She runs with good crowds, and we are developing a relationship also, which I
Well, this is
could.
I have a good friend, Jerry Shapiro, who's a psychology professor at Santa Clara. That's what the name struck me. But I don't think that's his daughter. But it's possible.
Wow.
It's possible.
I don't think Shauna's husband, who's in this picture, is a professor there. I think he does something else, but
But Shauna is the professor?
uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, who knows? Who knows? Jerry, I should look it up. They could be related. The Shapiro is not uncommon a name, but it's
Yeah.
interesting that she's a psychology professor or whatever at Santa Clara, and Jerry is a psychology professor at Santa Clara. So, well, it wouldn't be her; it would be his daughter because Jerry's 80 years old. So, that's
Oh, I
not,
see.
so yeah, he's old like me, or I'm old like him, or however we think of it. But anyway, okay, sorry, I was just curious.
By the way, after I did this little presentation for Shauna and her husband, Shauna said, that it was worth her time. She was glad she set it up, and she thought the entire psychology department at Santa Clara could benefit from a presentation from me. So I may be running over there, which not a perfect fit for me, but it's not bad through the collaborative practice stuff. So anyway, what I will touch on today is I thought, who would we want to talk to and tell the story to who would have a broad audience? Because that's the most efficient way to get the word out and then get lucky. So tech influencers was one of them, and that's where I'd probably use the idea of the informational interview. If they were interested enough, then they might offer some kind of referral or an invitation to speak on their podcast or something. But the first thing I got was tech influencers' names. I have a wonderful tool to find podcasts on any topic and submit proposals to be a guest. And then I made up a podcast pitch template with the help of AI that actually is quite excellent. Save work, save time. I also looked into, gee, could there be any grants for this kind of work? Because maybe it's in the public interest. Or
The answer is
maybe,
yes.
yeah.
We're
So-
bidding on a DARPA grant right now, next a week from now, because DARPA is very much wants this. It's
Awesome.
definitely in the public interest. So yeah, and if there, it's gone through a thrash and it was restructured. So now the way it's structured is by January 15th, which is a week from now, roughly, is the submittal date. So we're going to modify. In fact, while I'm talking to you, I'm getting my business partner sending me the drafts of the revised proposal to review.
Mhm.
But basically what DARPA is offering is they're doing a challenge. The challenge is next fall, late summer in Las Vegas. They're inviting as many companies as possible to compete for a $2 million prize. There will be 3 winners, the people who score the best on their test. In advance of that, they are handing out, there's what they call the small business track. So if you qualify as a small business or a startup, then they're offering 7 grants of $1 million each to any small business that wants to tackle this, that meets their needs. And this may be very political, but as I know what they want to do, and I look at what we do, there can't be anybody who is better qualified for doing what they want to do than us. That doesn't mean we're going to get the grant because, there's politics involved, right? It's a DARPA
Sure.
grant, so there's probably some senator from Oklahoma that wants his brother-in-law to get the money, right? You know what I'm saying. So who knows? But we're bidding on that. I can't believe that we're not a serious contender for that, because basically what they want is exactly what we do. It's precisely what we do. They could have written their requirements from our website. So yes, there's interest in this in the public interest. The government wants it. DARPA wants it. And so, yes, there are grants available. So and if we get that grant at $1 million, we're home free. I don't mean home free like, I can buy a house, but we're home free in the sense that plus other revenue that we have and that notoriety helps build our brand, right? If we come along and we say, by the way, investors, if you're interested in technology, we're one of only 7 companies or fewer that have been able to achieve this goal, so we're credible. So my belief, because talking with Tim, the guy that we recently brought on board to help us with the business development, he's astonished. He says he worked at Xerox PARC for 15 years, basically taking technology, helping transfer technology out of the R&D labs at Xerox PARC into startups and getting them going and building a market and finding customers. And so we've got him on board to do that for us. And he's astonished that we've had less than $1 million of investment in terms of what we've got, what we've accomplished, number of customers we've got, the level of maturity of everything. He said he's worked with companies that have far less in terms of product and have invested, $10 million in funds and haven't gotten as far as you guys have gotten. So, well, yeah, that doesn't mean anything until we have customers, right? But my hope is that with the revenue that we have now, we're on track for probably a minimum of 250K revenue in 2024, more like 500K. That's enough revenue that we should be able to go, and all these investors who said, we love your business, your technology, but we need you to establish a revenue stream. Well, the revenue stream of $500,000 a year isn't a lot, but it should be enough for us to get investment. Once we have investment, then we can really take off on the sales and marketing. So that's what we're on the cusp of. Or we're dead, one or the other. Well, we're not going to be dead because we just inked another $100,000 contract. So we're not dead yet. But yes, there are grants.
Well, and I've got a bunch of places to go check. If you've got a grant already put together, which I've been involved with academic grants just recently, then you could leverage that content, that template for other
Oh, yeah. Well, we've
grants as
also,
well. So,
the company got started off of an SBIR grant. And small business, if you know about SBIR, that's the government, that's Small Business Innovation, I can't remember what the R stands for, but it's basically a branch of the Commerce Department or whatever. It's the federal government that has a whole program for providing grants to start small businesses. And, only a small percentage of the applications get that. So, but my business partner, when he was in academia, had gotten lots of grants. He's received grants from Microsoft, from Google, from big name players for his research when he was in academia. And then he started the company off of an SBIR grant. So we got that. We also won a Shark Tank type award. I think I told you about that a little over a year and a half ago. Well, a year ago in Halloween. So that was in Bangladesh, where the engineering team is based. So
wow.
so we got that. So anyway, yeah, we haven't secured the level of investment we need to really make the company grow, to really execute the marketing plans that we would like to execute.
Would you be interested in foreign investors or partners?
Sure.
Because,
Our major investor is from the Czech Republic.
okay. Because one of the new tools that really is astonishing and opens up markets for people like crazy is, I'm trying to think of which company it was, but it's just almost on the tip of my tongue. They have a setup where you do a video, just somebody talking and showing the face, and then you can translate it into like 50 other languages, and the person's mouth is altered to look like they're speaking that language, and it uses their voice. So if you want to pitch like 50 different languages, it's no trouble anymore. It's a couple minutes. And I don't know if there's a free version or
well, I'll tell you what I found. I appreciate that idea. But what I found in talking to investors, it was true 30 years ago, it was true 10 years ago, it was true for the last 5 years that we've been seeking investors. Investors are, in fact, investors won't talk to you. I mean, it's almost impossible to get a cold call. The only way you can get anything serious with an investor is you have a contact there. Somebody knows somebody who recommends you. You already, it's relationships, as you point out, right? So the only way I've ever been able to get even a meeting with anybody is through a contact. We've cold calls, nothing. Don't get a response. Don't get anything. And we've done various ways of trying to do that. And we've gotten we've talked to very friendly investors, and every one of them. Now, it's because I have a thought, but I won't share that one right now. But every investor, serious investor we talked to, said, love your technology, love your business model, your value proposition. We think that there's some there. Show us that you can bring in revenue and we'll invest. Now, how some of these companies get $10 million of seed money with zero revenue, I have no clue. The only thing I can guess is it's based on some political connection. Somebody knows somebody. A lot of the startups I've seen recently have been self-funded. Somebody exited a company, made some money, and they started their next company by self-funding. But all of it, we've got some seed investment. We've raised with the grant and with seed investors, we've raised about $900K. But that's not a whole lot, because we've been in business for 6 years really.
Wow.
And that's because my partner and I don't take any money out of the business, right? So I've been working on this for 5 years, actually going to 6 years, because it was 2017. So it's been 6 years, and haven't taken a dime out of it in terms of compensation. So hopefully we'll get somewhere. But once we get a major investment, like I said, if we land the DARPA deal, if the DARPA grant comes through, we will have no problem getting investment. But right now, so what we've been challenged with over the last 3 years or so is generating enough revenue to get investment so we can grow. So we've been living by the skin of our teeth. Like I say, we managed to win this $100,000, Shark Tank grant. The nice thing about the Shark Tank grant from Bangladesh is it had no strings attached. There was no debt, no equity. It was just cash.
Wow, that's great.
which is great. And then you know, our investors in the Czech Republic are looking to bring forward a bit more money, but they've contributed, you know, less than 300K. And they've only contributed half of that so far. So we want them to release the other half based on our revenue projections. And we're trying to use the revenue to pay the bills right now. But we can basically pay the bills right now with the revenue that's coming in, because we can cover our expenses in Bangladesh, but we can't cover any. If I were to take a salary and my partner were to take a salary, then we wouldn't have enough to cover the Bangladeshi expenses. So right now the idea is keep the Bangladeshi operation going, because that's where our engineering expertise is, so that we can stay in business. And as long as we can keep them going until we get investment, we're good. And then the focus is more revenue right now, which brings us to the whole issue of you know, our success rate isn't bad if we get somebody into the funnel. If we can get someone's attention and we can talk to them, and then we can get a meeting and a demo. If they're interested enough to get a demo, we can usually get them, you know, about half of them agree to a proof of concept trial, and about half of those convert in terms of becoming a paying customer. But it's getting them into the top. So what we need is a lot more names in the top of the funnel. And that means getting people knowing what we do.
That is exactly what I've been mostly focused on here, is getting names to the top of your funnel.
Yep.
Like I say, be happy to talk to others in the company. Let me show you what I got. It's
Sure.
15 pages of shit that I looked up some tech influencers. This is the least interesting thing that I did. Nonetheless, if you could reach these people, Martin Fowler, Kent Beck in software development, and tech entrepreneurs. Of course, some of these are famous people. Even Elon wound up on here. But you know, these people, actually, I've even heard of Fei-Fei Li. These people are out there talking. They're interested in gathering new ideas, because that helps them be a better expert. And you know, they're generally pretty easy to approach people. And I've had my share of reaching out to people I don't know, and you know, usually nothing, but sometimes something great, like getting the Nobel Prize winner on our podcast. It's like, oh, he doesn't give interviews anymore. He doesn't meet with people. He said yes. Oh, okay. Down to his house, spent, you know, the day with him.
Fantastic.
Yeah, no, I've had just enough success to be completely open to approaching people. Like Sean has really networked with some top names in the personal growth area, including Dan Siegel, who you probably don't know because you're in a different field. But it looks like she's going to get me into Esalen to do workshops. So, you know, it's like, okay, because she does them there, and she knows the president, and she likes me and trusts me. So this is, you never know. So technology bloggers, podcast hosts, industry analysts, this would require some extra work to get in touch with these people. So it's not a finished idea. Actually, none of these are completely polished, but these are names, and who knows if you could write a cover letter and then send that out. I don't know how, or have one of the people that's doing some of the on the ground work at your company. But here's where I think there's a tremendous amount of leverage and a tremendous amount of opportunity, is being on podcasts. So you get even you, listen, you've got what it takes. You're great with people. You're excited about your work, and you could just say, hey, I'm a geek. I talk about the features too much, but here's what we've got, and here's why we think it's great for this world at this point. So I printed out some podcasts that actually I asked AI to relate it to your company in particular. So software development, productivity tools, latest trends in technology. These are podcasts, and I can get you the contact information for any of these, plus the listenership and so on, which we'll look at in a minute. Software Engineering Daily, the Cloudcast, Code Newbie. I mean, I haven't heard of these, but then again, I'm not in your field. I don't know if Python would relate.
It does.
Change log, no. Accidental Tech comes recording from the last call. Stack Overflow, InfoQ, This Week in Enterprise Tech. They seem to be pretty relevant. Here's a podcast pitch template, but before I do that, let me show you my podcast tool. I don't think I showed this to you, but I've shown it to a lot of folks. It's broadly useful, has 2.8 million podcasts listed, tells you the date of their last episode, how long they've been around, how many listeners they have, what's their social reach, and specific information on how to reach out to them to propose a guest. So I just looked at computer security, which isn't exactly right. And you can see podcasts with 480,000 listeners, 280,000, 1.8 million, that's 60 minutes. Anything that could be related, it brought up, and you can search on all kinds of things. This one brought up 43 results. And then I screened it for 99,000 listeners or more. And I guess you can sort it on those things. So you can easily find podcasts by topic. So is there a topic that you would think would be a general?
That would be interesting. I'm just curious, type static analysis and see if anything comes up. I doubt it because that's too narrow, but I'm just curious to see.
Yeah, I think you're tuned right in. Stack Overflow, coding blocks, and coding blocks. Coding blocks has 2 entries, which is weird. Stack Overflow. Let's look at it.
Stack Overflow. Well, so do you know Stack Overflow?
I don't know the podcast, but I know what Stack Overflow is.
Yeah. Well, Stack Overflow, everybody uses it has a lot of reach to developers. See, our issue is we're not a consumer product, right?
Right.
And we're not even a generic engineering product. We're specifically addressing, software engineering, and right now, 3 specific languages. We're going to be adding a 4th and a 5th language, but in terms of computer languages, we don't have all the languages that everyone would be interested in. But Stack Overflow might be an interesting place for people to get to know us.
That's what I'm thinking. Plus, it feels good to go out and practice telling the story and seeing what resonates. You always learn when you take action.
Here's the story. So you're giving me some good thoughts here. So we met this morning with, you talked about Alpha Omega. Well, we talked to the Alpha Omega guys this morning. It was actually the project called Alpha Omega, which is part of OpenSSF. OpenSSF means the Open Source Security Foundation. And it's a consortium under the umbrella of the Linux Foundation. So the Linux Foundation is a large organization that looks over open source. I saw Linus Torvald was on there, right? So among other people.
Right.
So there, and I have a wonderful graphic. I don't need to share it, but there's a wonderful graphic that's going around in the open source world. It shows all these little blocks, not quite like a Jenga thing, but different shaped blocks. And then at the top, there's all these layers. And at the very top, it's a little arrow pointing, there's a little block that's pointing to it, says business critical function. And it's layered on top of all this software, right? And when you go down through the layers, all of a sudden, as you get to the bottom, there's this huge gap in the structure. There's some blocks over here holding it up. There's all this empty space, and there's one little block at the outside edge that's holding the whole thing up. Okay, and the arrow points to it, and it says, this is a piece of software done by one guy in his mother's basement that's been maintaining it for free for 10 years. Okay.
Yeah. I'm
Okay.
not too surprised, actually.
Exactly. So
Oh
it's
my
it's an
God.
exaggeration, but it's a funny cartoon
Oh,
because
okay.
because what it's representing is the fact that in the open source world, it's open source. You have no idea who's maintaining it, right? It's free, right?
Yeah,
And
like
I
WordPress,
got to
like who knows what's going on.
there's so much. Something I've got a quote somewhere that says something like 70% of all of the software on the planet right now, back-end software, apps on phones. I mean, there's trillions of lines of software. Something like 70% of the software in the world is built on open source components. And if you've heard about security flaws recently, like there's always every few months there's another security flaw, and such a company has been right. All of the in our industry, in my industry, there's been three major things incidents that are so egregious that the estimate is this cost $1 billion to fix, or $700 million to fix, because so many programs used it that every program on the planet, tens of millions of products needed to be updated, right? It would cost hundreds of millions of dollars to fix, right?
Yes.
It turns out that each of those examples were in an open source component. It wasn't, so Microsoft has a critical security issue. It wasn't in Microsoft code. It was in code that Microsoft employed from the open source library. You mentioned Python. Python has a thing called the PyPy, which is the Python Product Index, PYPI, PyPy. And it is a directory or a library or a repository of open source modules that you can use. There are over, I try to remember, 60,000 entries. All right. So there's tens of thousands of libraries. Now, does everybody use all of them? No. And so to cut to the chase, we are talking to the alpha omega part of open source software security because they're funded by three companies you might have heard of: Microsoft, Google, Amazon. Okay. There's in the Alpha Omega project, there are three key principles. They each are representing those three companies who are pouring money into there that says we need to scrub the enormous library, and that's just Python. Then there's Java, and then there's C, and there's Go, which is from Google, and so there's hundreds of thousands of libraries that need to be scrubbed. It's not and bugs are finding bugs. So we've got a contract with them for the next 6 months to scan another few thousand of the libraries, and we're finding bugs, security bugs. And we're taking them back to the maintainers and saying, we found this bug, please fix them. And most of the people are fixing them. All right. So this is a long-winded way of saying one of the reasons we're doing this is we're doing this for free because we want to be able to, when you talk about influencers, if I were to go on a podcast, I want to be able to say, we are working with the Linux Foundation, the Open Source Security Foundation. We are finding and fixing bugs, and we have analyzed 5,000 projects. We have found, 700 critical security vulnerabilities that have been fixed, blah, 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 right? And then the idea there is that story gets spread out, and hopefully, if you're an engineer at a company and you're saying, wow, these guys are finding bugs, I wonder about our code, then that's how our name gets known. So we're trying to use that as and probably the 1st of February, we're going to open, but the trick here is, how do we advertise? Because we don't have any money for advertising, but we want to get out the word, and a podcast may be a way to let people know we've got a new service called Test Drive. And it'll be a cloud service that we will run. So we'll pay for it. We, meaning our company, will pay for it. And anybody who wants to can log into the service, and using GitHub, if you know what GitHub is a huge repository. We will analyze any open source project in any of those languages, Java, Python, and Go, that we currently support, for free.
Mhm.
And we'll continue to do that. The idea is go ahead and for free, we'll analyze your program and give you the output, which is the identified security vulnerabilities and reliability. We can also detect reliability bugs as well, things that might cause your program to crash. We cover a lot of critical bugs. And so the idea with that is I would also want people to go and learn about test drive and come out and try test drive. So I'd want to do this once test drive is live and operating, which is hopefully early February. So the idea of doing that over a podcast is an interesting way of getting the word out, because trying to think about how do we get the word out so that people know that
And
it's
if you used podcasts that were focused on enterprise software issues, you've got the geeks of the geeks in there. Maybe not quite as many listeners, but what are they going to listen to?
Well, that's why Stack Overflow, while it only had a couple 100,000 listeners, it's the right kind of listeners.
But its social outreach is actually 800,000.
That's true.
So there's a whole bunch there. And watch this little trick here. Contacts. So it just has this person, Steph, and where to send a pitch. Boom.
That's interesting.
To every podcast you find. I pay a fair amount for this software. Plus, I've set up a list just for you so that if we gather ideas over time, we can pop them in here in a handy list. This Week in Tech, I used to listen to that all the time, and now they're up to 9 million listeners. They have several spin-offs, but they're really fun to listen to. It's kind of general. And then there's one from Andreessen Horowitz, which gets into the venture capitalists and things like that. 300,000, 380,000.
Well, that it might be interesting too from an investment point of view. Like I say, if I could, once we just completed a $50,000 contract with OpenSSF with the Alpha Omega guys. We just got off the phone this morning and we're inking another deal for 100,000 for 6 months. Probably after that will be another 6 months. So it's probably 200 grand for 2024 alone. But what was interesting is they were asking us about how they can help us to build it as a sustainable model. So that, so I want to try and use them and leverage them and their community.
Yeah.
The Linux Foundation is huge, right? There's lots of people.
Absolutely. And the work you're doing really is important. It's damn important.
Yeah.
Well, by the way, you probably already thought of 80% of what I'm going to come up with, but I would think that it would be really good for self-driving cars to have reliable software.
Yes.
And probably good for public recognition too.
Yeah.
Well, come to think of it, our new drones that are going to attack the enemy, we don't want them flying off and attacking us. That would also be good.
The problem with
that's DARPA.
The good news, bad news, it's actually potentially good news, is almost all of that stuff is written in either C, C++, all these embedded stuff, or Rust. Rust is a new language coming out. Specifically for the embedded world.
How did this happen?
And so what's happened is, because of our work, the Rust Consortium, these are the people who are defining the language and putting out the tools and promoting Rust, have contacted us. They want us to be the first to provide a bug scanning tool for their programming language. So we're going to have that available,
That's going to be a feather in the cap.
Exactly. And we'll be able to have access to all those Rust customers, because we'll be the only guy on the block that has a working Rust analysis thing. So that we're doing that, and that helps the embedded world. And it turns out, talking about relationships, that I've got connected with this woman who is basically the major influencer in what's called Zephyr. Zephyr is an open source operating system for embedded systems. And when I say embedded systems, that's where your drones and your self-driving cars, and that's where all that comes in. They're all using embedded systems. She's interested in our C product. And actually, we started the company with our C product, and we parked it because C was too hard to deploy, meaning I just couldn't drop it in and go. You had to do configuration, and that was a barrier to entry. So we parked it. But now people are asking for our C product again. So the bad news is we had a C product, but it's kind of in dormant. Now we're going to try and revive the C product. And the DARPA people want the C product. So that's, again, if we can get that $1 million grant, we'll have the C product. That will expand, open us into the embedded system, because I agree with you wholeheartedly. You don't want people penetrating your self-driving car software or your drones or any of that stuff. So, and in fact, the reason DARPA wants this is DARPA wants this not just for military, but also commercial use, because they want to try, and DARPA is trying to come up with technologies that basically what their report says is we want intelligent technologies that can scan code, find bugs, and fix them before they get deployed. That's what their call to, their request for bids is, and that's exactly what we do.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you know anybody who does that? No.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, these are all ways that I'm hoping for. And if we can get that contract and we now have DARPA behind us, then it's going to be easy to get, Kara Swisher to talk about us, because it will have been selected by DARPA talking about this new AI technology, blah, blah, blah.
Well, here's a pitch template that you could use or modify. And this was super easy. 4 podcasts. I hope this message finds you well. My name is blah, blah, blah. I'm reaching out on behalf of OpenRefactory, a cutting-edge software company revolutionizing the way businesses handle code, refactoring, and technical debt. Given the insightful conversations on your podcast, we believe your audience will greatly benefit from learning about blah, blah, blah. And it actually wrote all this stuff, which is boilerplate, but nobody has to do it if it's close to what you want. Your unique value proposition, potential discussion points for a podcast, how you identified the gap and aimed to fill it, and challenges and the future of, and the real world impact, great talking points. And then your little bio and that you appreciate it. So that is in there. You could use a similar pitch, I guess, to go to publications. It's the same thing as podcasts, but slower, because it takes 2 or 3 months for a print publication usually to go through its publication cycle. But obviously TechCrunch, Wired, Next Web, and I hadn't heard of that. Good old R's.
Some of those I've heard of.
Yeah, all these are pretty big names. But I don't know anybody at Forbes anymore, but I attended one of their conferences where virtually everybody flew in their own private jet. It was pretty cool.
Wow.
It really was something. IEEE Spectrum. I don't know. Maybe not great leads because they're obvious names, but maybe they might be everybody's looking for content when they publish. So, and then I said, are there specific companies that might need these tools now? Like, cut right to the chase. Say, hey, who's ready to hear from our friends?
It's funny. We're already talking to GitHub and GitLab and Atlassian won't return our calls, even though Steve Cross has a contact there. They just haven't gotten back to us.
Well, I'll give you a quick story of how some of this research can help. One of my clients, who hardly ever asks for anything, we had gotten through getting him into a new house and stuff. And I said, you know what? You don't ask for very much. And is there anything else we could do for you? He said, well, as a matter of fact, he said, we've been trying to get solar panels installed on the new house for like 2 months. They were installed, but they don't work. And I can't even get the engineering people at AT&T to call me back. Or not AT&T, it was, I guess it was Comcast. Whoever it was. Or no, it wasn't AT&T, it was Comcast's Xfinity, I think it was Xfinity. No, they wouldn't do. Anyway, big company, known name. I said, okay. So that afternoon we went online and found out who the president of the damn company was, found her on social media, direct messaged her. And by that night, she had contacted my client with an apology and a promise that a tech would be in touch with the next 24 business hours. Like, okay. Sometimes you get lucky.
Yeah.
So e-commerce giants obviously are in here.
We've already got
Tech-heavy
contact with
enterprises.
Google. We've already got contact with JP Morgan. Those are two companies where we've already got a contact and we're working with them already. PayPal, not so much, but we're also working with Red Hat. Red Hat is probably our closest to being. They're going to start deploying in February internally.
Wow.
And
Wow,
also Uber.
internally.
And also Uber, because I have an old friend who worked at Uber, except that all of the people in the organization that was going to use it all left the company in
Oh.
November. So we're starting over at Uber, but anyway, we're getting somewhere with those guys too.
Awesome. You know, I just realized this morning that I was on a vision quest with a guy who was in charge of all the computer systems for, it might have even been JP Morgan. It was one of the, I think it was the largest bank in the US, whatever it was at the time. And he was actually the number 2 guy in the IT department, and the number 1 guy left. So he was like it. And I've got to find his name and see if you know him already, but I could introduce you to him. And that's, I guess he was even at a party at the White House through this, position he was in. And so I'm happy to reach out. And I made a note of that earlier. Healthcare and tech and health tech. Oh my God.
Well, we also have a deployment coming at American Express in New York. So Amex is another company. So the financial people are pretty, yeah, like I say, this is when Tim got on board and said, wow, you guys have gone a long way for a company that's only had $900,000 worth of investment. And the answer is, yeah, I just wish we had the proper investment so we could really nail all of these. So,
yeah. Oh my God. Well, I heard enough to say, let me jump on this too, to see if I could contribute to anything.
appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. You've got the automotives, you've got the retail chain, SaaS providers, and a lot of these companies are in the Bay Area, which is handy.
Yeah.
Also. And Internet of Things and home.
Yeah, for
smart
that
home.
stuff we need C. So we're working on that.
I wonder if you could have some of the software generated for the C implementations by AI and then use your own software to check it out or something.
Well, no,
It's not that simple.
it's not that simple. The algorithms we use, the reason that we have a differentiation is the algorithms that we're using. It's essentially to give you an idea of what happens is you take a source code program, right? What is it? It's a language, right? It has variables in it and it has verbs in it. Verbs are actions. They could be operators like add 2 numbers together. They could be an operator like write a piece of information here or there or whatever, right? And then then made up of collections of those instructions, which is here, call this function which does this operation and do it on this data, and that calls other functions. And so what you do is you read all the source code and you build a map of all of the paths through the code. So if you get to this point, it branches out 7. It could call 7 other different functions, and it passes these variables to those functions. Different variables for different functions, and then that function over here, it branches out, and that function, and maybe sometimes this function uses something that this function uses, so they come together. Okay, so what you do is you build a model of the tree, or a model of the program, which is basically a tree, if you will, right, of connecting nodes, right? This path goes here, goes here, goes here. So if you want to, you can follow the life of a variable. A variable is here, it's used in this function, it gets passed here, it gets added to that function. So that variable is a combination of something else plus that one. So remnants of that variable and so on work its way through the program. So now you've got this massive tree. And now you want to analyze all the paths. For example, you may want to see if a piece of data that hasn't been scrubbed by the computer, in other words, how a lot of these security attacks occur. I don't know if you've ever heard of the term of a SQL injection or SQL attacks, right? What somebody does is they create a query, which is really a string of characters. And inside that characters is an escape that if it was given to the SQL engine, it's an escape that causes it to do something, maybe unlock something or reveal a password or whatever. So what you have to do is you have to scrub that string to make sure there's no illegal text in it, no escape characters or anything magical in it, right? So now so at some point you might get that string from outside the program. A user typed it in, or it was retrieved from an outside source. Someone sent it to you over the internet. So you know you have this string. If you don't scrub that string on its way to the SQL engine and check it for contamination, you're vulnerable. All right.
And a SQL is a database, right?
SQL is the query language for the database. Yeah, it's a database, right?
Oh, okay.
Right. And what happens is that database is down in the bowels of the operating system, and it's going to have access to raw data and information and locations, maybe like passwords. Right. And so unless you've scrubbed that, so that's referred to as in the security game as tainted data, because it came from the outside. If it came from the outside and there is a path, so it may be scrubbed in lots of places, but there may be a path through the code where it's not scrubbed. Right. And if there's a path between the tainted data input and a system call where the data has not been cleaned up, that's a vulnerability. So you have to be able to detect that path, and you have to, now, you can imagine that in a program, there's hundreds of millions of paths, right, that could be taken, right, because there's variables and, right? So what analysis tools do is you follow those paths, and you follow the lives of variables, and you do other similar things looking for common problems. Like that was just one example. There are many examples. That's just one example. And so what you have to do is you have to be able to process that tree reliably. So what happens is the tools that exist in this game already, they've been around for about 25 years. They have two weaknesses. They work, but they have two weaknesses. Because you can't possibly analyze the trillions of paths, because it's basically almost an infinite number of possible paths through anything complex, you have to prune the tree, meaning you have to limit the depth of your analysis. All right. And for speed, because they want to run these programs quickly, what they give up is precision. So what they do is they generate a high rate of false positives. What I refer to that as, this could be a bug, this could be a bug, this could be a bug. To give you an example that we encountered with Red Hat, they were analyzing a Python, it was a Java program, 150,000 lines, complex, but not, millions of lines of code, 150,000 lines of code. Our leading competitor found 2,200 warnings, generated 2,200 and something warnings. If you get rid of some of the easy warnings and then you analyze it, you cut that in half down to about 1,000. When you then triage that, which means engineers have to walk through and look through each bug and decide if it's a false positive or not, they ended up with 95 bugs. So you start with 2,000, of which 95 are real bugs, right? That's a lot of overhead, right? And the second thing is they don't necessarily catch all the bugs because their analysis isn't deep enough. So when we ran on the same thing, we generated 115 warnings. Okay, and that's what woke up Red Hat's eyes. What? Because they were using this other tool, and they was like, what? So we found 115. We had 6 false positives, right?
Oh, wow.
All right. So there was like 111, what was it? 100 or 108 bugs or 109 bugs. So we found bugs that the other tool didn't find. We found all the ones they found. We found ones they didn't find, and we found it at 2 orders of magnitude fewer false positives. And that's the result of the this is a long story to tell you that the algorithms that we use, that's why we have a differentiation, because what we do, this is why ChatGPT isn't going to help us analyze the code any better. Because all ChatGPT does is it looks at bugs that have already been discovered, right? It's finding patterns statistically, and that's useful to some extent. But it can't find random bugs in random code without doing this level of analysis. And you know, my partner's work as his PhD thesis and subsequent work is new models or new mathematics, or not new mathematics, but manipulating the mathematical algorithms and improving their performance so that we get a level of depth of analysis that nobody else can touch. Right.
Oh, wow.
And so that's our proprietary secret sauce, is our ability to analyze that and then fix the bugs later, because we have all of the information around about how the program was constructed. So that's what we do that no one else can do, which is what Red Hat is interested in. Because if and it turns out that almost nobody is interested in the fact that we fixed the bugs. What they care about is getting rid of the false positives, because they can run the code, and it doesn't matter if the code runs in 10 minutes if it takes them, you know, 30 hours of engineering time to go through and process the results. Right? In our case, it took less than an hour to go through our 115 bugs and find the 6 false positives. Right? So that's
very clear.
Again, saving. But it's also why ChatGPT isn't going to be able to write the code for us, because it's not going to know how to do these algorithms and how to run the mathematical models that we run to do the depth of analysis that we do. On the other hand, we have for this DARPA grant, we have proposed a system that my partner calls Buddy. He calls it Buddy because we're merging our static analysis algorithms with large language models, which is what ChatGPT uses. And we're going to use the large language models to improve the fixes that we generate. So once we've identified a bug, all right, now that we've identified it, then ChatGPT or large language models and all that statistical data can help us synthesize a better fix.
Wow.
So that's what we're going to do for DARPA.
Speaking of which, I'm sure you've thought of this too, but it's an awesome thing and could be good press. Could your code help reduce the hallucinations of AI and chatbots and some of the other problems that are inherent?
Probably not. Probably not.
Bummer. It would have been such good press.
Well, the good press, but we can't get the press is, you know, I mentioned that there were 3 major bugs that were found that were in open source code. That, you know, one was found about a year ago, one was found about 2 years ago, one was found about 5 years ago. The one that was found like 5 years ago or 8 years ago, it actually made the nightly news. It was called the heartbleed bug. You may even vaguely remember that.
Yeah, I remember it.
It was a bug in secure sockets. So when we had our C product, we ran our C product on that library and we found the bug. And then 2 years ago, there was a major issue in the Java world. It was called the log4j problem, because everybody used that class in Java, and there was a security vulnerability in it. So we ran our Java tool against that version of the library, and we found the bug. And then about a year ago, there was an issue in Python where it caused a huge uproar in the press, at least the trade press in Python. So we ran our Python tool against that version of the library, and we found that bug. So we've tried to put out that we're the only tool that actually had the tool been run against those products at the time, we would have detected the bugs before it got deployed out to hundreds of millions of users. And I think that should be great press, but right now there's no way to get that message out for people to hear it.
Well, if you were on a podcast where you had
exactly
IT people, then they go, oh, I get that, you know, and I want that. And I'm in a position to help, acquire it.
So we also participate, we meaning my partner and I also participate when we can in a meetup. Is it a Slack group? No, it's a meetup group for software security specialists globally. Although most of the participants are usually American, some South American, some European, but some Indian.
Sure.
But it's a software security group, And each month they have a monthly meeting, with dozens and dozens of people, and there's a different topic and so on. And one of the principals of that group is very interested in what we do, but it's the usual problem of, wow, boy, I'd love to use your stuff, but our company just signed a contract with one of your competitors, so we're not really going to be able to change for another, 3 years because we signed a 3-year contract, right? So that's one of our issues in terms of selling, because it's hard for any sort of seasoned IT person to take a company that's established and they've got a 3-year contract and toss them out for a little ankle-biting startup in Silicon Valley, right? No matter what we say. So we have to come up with a sales model that says, we don't expect you to displace your existing technology, but there should be room for us, and that's what's happening at Amex, right? We're not trying to sell to the whole company. We're going to sell to one department. And if they get the benefit, they tell their friends and they tell their friends. And so it's got to be a bottom-up grassroots, because the IT people aren't going to abandon, the big names for a little Silicon Valley ankle biter.
And that's why it reinforces the argument to target people who are knowledgeable enough to recognize that this is worthy of looking at in spite of those relationships, because it's so much better.
Yep. And that's right. That's why we're working the Open SSF and Linux Foundation, because guess what? Everybody's using that open source software, and thousands and thousands of engineers use that stuff. And that's how they're going to learn about it. They're not going to learn about it because their boss came in and said, we're throwing out this is their competitor, and we're going to, and that's what we're doing at Red Hat. With Red Hat, we're doing, strategic placement, right, in various different groups to try it out. And with Rust, I'm hoping to be able to get in because I don't have to displace the Rust customers. There aren't any.
Well, and if some of those groups that work with open source software want to position themselves as a more useful tool, if they're using your software to clean up their offerings, that would be a real competitive advantage.
Oh yeah,
for them.
Yep.
So
yep.
Anyway, we brush through the rest of it and see if anything is of interest. Another thing you can do is you can look at your website, which I did, and it has a complete, or maybe not complete, but has a rudimentary analysis to, and it's actually rating you pretty high of navigation and graphics and content and tone.
Is this who did this analysis? You did this personally, or ChatGPT?
I did. I used ChatGPT for it. Yeah. I used it on my own website, one of them, and it was like, wow, that's so helpful. Hadn't thought about having that. And so your website's professional, informative, easy to navigate, effectively communicates the value proposition. There's some room for improvement in simplifying technical jargon, adding a touch of personality, and tailoring content for a broader audience. I don't know. Contact page could have this, blah, blah, blah. But it sounds like it's pretty damn good. And then I looked for government grants, National Science Foundation. You're already on that. And private foundations as well, and venture capital, angel investors. I looked for sources of funding beyond just grants, and came up with a few ideas. So that was
one of our seed investors is a participant in Silicon Valley Angels, which is a well-known investment group. And he basically said, come to me with $1 million annual run rate revenue, and I've got all kinds of investors for you. But
Lord, it's always just beyond the.
It's always, that's what it seems.
There's
right?
the carrot. There's the carrot.
Well, the part that annoys me is don't tell me you're high risk if you're not going to risk anything until you have a proven product. That's hardly taking. Don't tell me that you're taking. I mean, everybody takes risk, of course, but when you're saying, hey, if I was generating $1 million of revenue, I'd be profitable, and I could even have a salary. I wouldn't necessarily need further investment to keep the company going, given how far we've gone on our 900,000 over multiple years at $1 million a year of run rate. I mean, yeah.
That's another argument for you guys, because you have the discipline and the conviction and the commitment to be able to run like that. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this
Um,
was
ju-
really cool. Have you got a little bit? Well, looks like you got a little bit more here. Oh no, that's that was it. This is, you did
I
a lot of
just
work,
went,
Peter. I appreciate the effort you put into putting this together.
I wanted you to know that I'm willing to go into, I wasn't planning to bring you stuff that was already cooked, you know. I was gonna, these are like ingredients that we could use
Right.
if any of them, if you want to hook into any of them, explore them with another mind working on it.
Well, I might go over this with Tim, our business development guy, because he loves this kind of stuff. That's what he feeds on.
Me too.
And
So,
he
and I'd be
he likes
happy to
doing that.
talk to him. And we've got a video of this. So
Oh, cool.
you know, it's recorded on Zoom, and I can post it to YouTube with a private link and
Sure.
give him access. I don't think Otter ever came back and is going to do a, I don't know, maybe Otter's mad at me. It's hard to tell sometimes with these females. But we'll get it, I'll get it posted, and then you can share it if you want, and plus the document.
Yep.
And be happy to talk to him as well. Yeah, I was just hoping I could maybe crack open a little bit of
Well, you've
extra
given me
light
some
for
ideas
you.
that I hadn't thought of, and that's
Okay.
valuable. Some of the stuff, like I say, like grants and stuff, you know, we were already chasing that, but other stuff like how to leverage podcasts or the tech influencers, or I'm not convinced that the written press is that big a deal anymore. I'm not sure people are using that. I think people are more likely to be listening to podcasts on their drive to work than they are reading IEEE Spectrum to get
Yeah,
the
it's more
latest.
up to date too.
Yes, exactly. So that's why I think that's a good idea.
Hmm.
So anyway, good stuff.
I've got the tool, and we can go through it anytime you want. I actually pay a pretty penny for that one, but I use it with quite a few of my clients
The
who
one,
are
the one
marketing
that
books and things.
the one that analyzes the podcasts and looks for things, that looked like a pretty
Yeah,
interesting tool for sure.
it's pretty cool. That's not AI. That's just pure, you know, database and scraping the different directories.
Well, to be honest, all Chat GPT is just a mondo huge database and statistical analysis. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, fundamentally, it's doing all of that by having analyzed millions of you know, basically web entries. And I think it's
Yeah.
interesting that people like New York Times are suing the Chat GPT folks. Well, you know what? They're printed. This is interesting, right? Our laws are not really set up for this because their printed material is copyrighted. And so it becomes an interesting question
and books.
And books. So if I read so this is the interesting thing, is if I read your copyrighted material and get an idea and employ that idea commercially, am I in violation of your copyright? Because
How
that's
much different does it have to be?
Well, or just because a machine read it and got an idea. In other words, if the answer is I read your paper, or I read your newspaper articles, and I got an idea on a solution to something, and I marketed that, am I violating your copyright? I think the answer is no in today's economy, right? If I read, you know, 5 different reports on the war in Gaza, and I come up with an idea that says, you know, this might help, and I put that into place, have I violated your copyright? I don't think anybody would say yes. But if ChatGPT,
yeah, I remember when Google bought every book in the world, ripped it apart, scanned all the pages, and, you know, the authors were, of course, upset about that. But there's a thing called reasonable use or fair use. And so you're allowed to borrow parts. But I liked what Kurt said years ago, because that's applicable here too, is if you borrow from one source, it's plagiarism. If you borrow from any sources, it's research. It's like, yep. Like, hey, wait a minute, your song infringes on mine because it's got the same 12 notes in it.
Well, this is the problem. This is the same thing with this garbage, in my view, around cultural appropriation, right? It seems to me that how we built a supposed civilization with Trump around, I don't know whether civilization, the word applies anymore, but at least at one point we had what I thought was a working civilization, right? How did we do that? As the saying goes, we built upon the shoulders of those that came, we stood on the shoulders of those who came before us. In other words, not every child that's born starts from scratch, right?
Nobody starts from scratch.
Right. And we're
born with some stuff, but no.
Exactly. But we learn and we leverage from the experiences of others, right?
Good argument on the cultural thing.
Exactly, right? It seems to me if someone picked up my cultural things, I'd be happy. I'd be saying, great, I'm sharing something, you know, instead of, you know, why do I want to keep it private? If it's a value for me, why wouldn't it be a value for you? That's my value system, right? So that's why the idea of, you know, of cultural appropriation, I don't understand. It's if this is a wonderful, you know, I'm trying to think of my Indian friends. You know, my Indian friends have some wonderful family traditions. You know, and I'm thinking, oh wow, I'd love to incorporate.
You have dinner together in your culture.
Wow. Yeah. Oh well, yeah, the cultural appropriation. Yeah. I mean, you know,
Indeed,
is it wrong? Is it wrong that I like using chopsticks when I'm at a pho restaurant? You know, that's because that's cultural appropriation, because I'm using a tool that was, you know, allowed me to basically eat with my fingers.
I'm so with you on that, really. Using electronic musical instruments too is derivative kinds of stuff, but it allows us to do more. It's not quite as, you know, there's not as much finesse as there would be, you know, playing a violin with a virtuoso. But Nancy Ross gave us a good example of this. Some years ago, we were developing a course to train collaborative practice people in trust and estates. And we published a book of protocols, like pretty thick binder on that, and led some courses. And the other folks in our group said, well, you don't want to share that like with the Vancouver group because they steal everything. And Nancy said, I hope they do. We're here to get the ideas out.
Yes.
That'd be great. I hope they do steal it. It's like,
well, yeah, that's the idea of, that's the constant dilemma of at what point is intellectual property and do you hold it to your, I remember when I started in this business in the Valley here in the 80s, early 80s, that all of the tech companies were all doing the same thing. They were all reinventing or inventing proprietary code to do the same thing because you didn't want to give away valuable software. So Hewlett Packard had their own operating system, and Xerox had their own operating system, and Apple had their own operating system, and everybody had their own operating system for their own proprietary computers, right? And you know, when the IBM PC came out and personal computers came out, not so much the Apple II because it was more hobbyist, but the IBM PC, you know, suddenly, well, so now Microsoft has their own operating system, but Digital Research has an operating system, and so on and so forth, right? And what happened over time is it turns out that hoarding that technology just slowed development. Once it became possible to reuse stuff, the industry exploded, right? So, but on the other hand, you know, I'm not crazy about the Google model of how to make money, which is I give you a free service and I sell your private data for a profit, or Facebook, you know. That's not my idea of how to make money. That's, you know, I'm not crazy about that model, but that's their business model. I'd just rather sell a product that gives you value and or a service that gives you value and you know, away you go. Anyway,
there's got to be some new models out there. Well, so I will save this video onto YouTube with a private link. I'll share that with you, and you've got this document to play with.
That's awesome. That's
my
awesome.
offer to hang out.
Sure. I'm going to share it with Tim and see. He likes this stuff, and and we work well together because he likes doing the pitches. And then when it gets to the technology, he likes it when I do the technology because I can explain the technology to their technology guys. And so the two of us are, you know, Mutt and Jeff or whatever, and you know, works out great.
I think you explain it well to non-technology guys too, if I'm an example of that. In fact, I'm sure that's true for you in lots of different subjects. So unfortunately, you might have to spend some time talking to people, but I know it's fun to do the actual work that we're here to do.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
good
Well,
too.
I don't mind talking to the people. It's doing the advertising, marketing, the pitches, the cold calls, all that stuff that I don't like.
Yeah, we'll just get you the appointment with whoever it might be, and
Yeah,
then
yeah, there
we
you
just
go.
chat.
Yeah,
That's perfect
that's
for
the
getting.
thing. Cool.
Yeah, that's my feedback. So there you are, laddie.
Well, thanks, Peter. This has been a help, and I'm going to try and leverage this as best I can over the next few days as we
Let's
try to
just
get stuff done.
we can get a little wedge in the door or something. But I did
Well,
pretty good for an hour and a half of work, huh?
you did well. We were great. And like I say, it might good job. And I think we're this close to breaking the nut. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we've got some revenue, we're getting some name. I just think that all it takes is one or two more events and boom, once we get that investment, because the cool thing is once we get that investment, we've got an engineering team that can crank out the other languages to fill the gaps, because somebody wants us to do JavaScript, somebody wants us to do PHP, somebody wants us to do what's the other Oracle language? Anyway, there's 100 languages out there, right? And somebody wants to do, wants us to tackle more of them, and we can do that with more investment. And then we can also go to more shows, right? The more shows we go to, the more people know who we are.
Shows, conferences, whatever.
Yep.
Hey, I'm getting paid to do a presentation pretty soon. That's going to be
Good.
fun. It's not a show, but
Even better.
I'm starting to get some, pieces coming together and little breakthroughs, which is we've been chipping away and hammering at those nuts also, but finally crack.
Yep. Good.
All right. Well, good luck with it. Let me know if I can be of any help at all. And I'll go to bat for you, maybe Charles Schwab or something. I don't have
Even better.
connections per se, but
But
yeah.
you never know who you might run into. That's how we found Tim. That's how we found this guy, Tim, is Eamon. Eamon met this guy through one of these social networking services. I don't know, was it lunchtime or whatever, something like that. There's where you have lunch with somebody, and he met this guy, and this guy thought he might be interested. So he connected me with that guy, and that guy said, well, I know another guy. And next thing you know, I got hold of Tim, and I talked with Tim, and Tim was, so now we got together through those personal connections. That's how stuff happens.
That's how something else I do with ChatGPT that I meant to include and break out is you look for people that have an interest in this area one way or another. I did have some tech influencers, but I mean there's journalists, for example, that have a strong interest in it and publications, and finding out who they are it's great that we can do that now because I haven't even seen their articles, but I can find them.
Right.
So anyway, take care.
All right, Peter.
Wishing you the best on this. I think
thanks.
Sounds like you are close. I'll be praying.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Thanks for your effort, and have a good day. And we'll talk again soon.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
Okay.